Hello everybody. So it does seem like most people are back, but I'm not going to be here today because we're upstairs doing the ILAC. So I'm going to go through something with you now, if I can find it. Couple of things, and then I'll leave you this work, and I'm going to leave you a quiz. So go to Google Classroom and pick all that up. Now I'm going to do this backwards for reasons that will make sense. So let's start on page 154, stage directions. Now the stage directions are part of the script, and we looked at one the other day with Introducing Dinah, where they tell you what to do and where to go. So let's read what it says in the book. Stage directions are inserted into plays to guide the actor on how to perform the lines or where to move on the stage. They help readers to imagine how the characters speak, the emotions they show on their faces, their movements on stage, and who they are interacting with. Stage directions are in brackets. They're often shown in italics so that the actors do not mistake them for parts of their lines. And what's amusing is that everybody always does. You know, when you get into a classroom and people are reading, they almost always read the stage direction. Someone will do it. Someone will read the stage direction and say something stupid, and everybody will laugh. It gets a big laugh. But we aren't used to reading these things because they are very unnatural. I remember years ago there was a Star Trek fan fiction. And this was when Star Trek was kind of on a break, and people were hungry for it. So this team got together and they wrote a Star Trek TV show, but they didn't have the money to shoot it. So they literally just released the script. And it actually did quite well within sort of relative numbers. And people read it. But personally, I never understood why people would be interested in reading it. It was a script, and most people struggle to read scripts because they are so unnatural. I mean, you can get used to it, but I think it takes an awful lot of practice and skill to really get the most out of a script. And again, as an example of that, most actors are really bad at choosing roles because the script is vague. And it's going to be reinterpreted by the director, who will or won't want each actor to bring something of themselves to the role. So they're going to control all the different aspects. As an example of this, there was a really fantastic film made by one of my favourite directors, Terry Gilliam, called 12 Monkeys. It's quite an old film, but it's really worth a look. 12 Monkeys, and it stars Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt. Now, these are both Hollywood stars that you would have heard of. The difference is that Brad Pitt is a naturally very good actor with a dynamic range, excellent performance. Brad Pitt has never been bad in a movie. He's done some bad movies. All actors will at some point, but he's never been bad in a film. And he'd just come out of Fight Club, and as expected, he owned the entire movie. Every scene he's in, he just destroyed all the other actors. He just took the role and made the film his own. But Bruce Willis was actually the lead, the protagonist, and he is known to be a pretty terrible actor. I mean, he is. There's no getting around it. He's a terrible, garbage-level actor. He's now doing terrible, garbage-level movies. So he's kind of found his own niche. It seems like every week he's producing some new piece of absolute garbage. So, mosquitoes, little shits. So he's a terrible actor, and Terry Gilliam got a fantastic performance out of him. So on the script, it would have been him delivering lines, and if he'd have been allowed to do what he normally did, it would have been a terrible film. But Terry Gilliam said to him, you can act by doing nothing. You can literally convey an emotion without overacting. So in other words, you can take away your performance to enhance your performance. And that's something that you wouldn't have got from the script. There's no stage direction that says, do not act, because that would be ridiculous. But a good director can take this and take the actor and bring it all together and produce a vision. And that's what the script is. It's the beginning of this process, not the end. So you or I are going to look at these scripts and it's not going to make an awful lot of sense. So I do appreciate that to us, this looks like something that isn't really going to gel. And for most of us, we are never ever going to use this. We're never going to use stage direction unless you're an actor. I can't imagine anybody else ever using it. The only exception might be for a speech where a speech is professionally written for somebody that's reading it to an audience, and it might say brief pause or maybe move the slide to a different one, something like that. But generally speaking, none of this is going to ever be relevant to us. So let's have a look at these lines from Introducing Dinah. Harvey is lying on the floor reading a magazine. Lloyd is pacing up and down. Now, when this is written, obviously the writer is producing something so that there's nuance, and there actually is. If we look at Introducing Dinah, there are clever little bits in it that give us impressions, because it probably came from a book where the book was written quite well. So Harvey is lying on the floor reading a magazine. So what that tells us is that Harvey is a reader. He's not someone that just sits in front of a television. He's curious about the world, but he's not reading a book. He's reading a magazine. So he hasn't gone all the way to fully intellectual, but he has gone away from TV or playing stupid games. So he's a better character, but not the most smart. He's better, but not all the way up there. And then we've got Lloyd, who's pacing up and down. So he's worried, he's suspicious. The very act of pacing up and down tells us something about him. Every little clue that we can take from a script tells us something about these characters. So the stage directions above suggest that Lloyd is agitated about something, while Harvey is unaffected by it, or at least relaxed, doesn't really care about it. Each actor will thus have to carry out the stage directions, so the audience is aware of each character's state of mind. I would go further and say that it's important that the actors understand the script. The director will go through this, he'll work out what he wants, or what she wants these days. It's pretty evenly split. And they will want to have the actors do their job in the way they want it done. So they will produce their vision. So in their head, they'll know what they want from the team, and the actors will have to do their part, depending on what the director wants from them. So what does the stage direction in the following lines show about the characters involved? Think of the emotions that the actors have to convey so that the audience will understand and empathise with the characters. Mrs. Hunter, how lovely to see you. We've been expecting you. She hugs Dinah, who stiffens. In this context, stiffen means she became very awkward. She maybe pulled back, maybe was afraid. If I was the director, that's exactly what I'd want. As she comes open, I'd want her to reel back. If she goes too far back, that might be giving us a different impression. Stiffen means slightly awkward. So that tells us she's not used to affection. She might not trust people easily. She's not been around a family situation for a long time. It tells us a lot about Dinah, and it also tells us a lot about Mrs. Hunter. She's excited to have her as part of the family. She's trying to make her feel welcome. She's trying to be nice. So it tells us something about both of these characters. Now, if we went further than that, if we had Mr. Hunter, for instance, step forward and try to hug her, that would be a very different connotation. It would go beyond friendly and go into the area of being creepy. That probably wouldn't be a good thing at all, and it would certainly give a different impression. If Dinah reeled backwards even more, it would suggest if she was really frightened, then she's been hurt or abused in some way before. And that's, again, a very different connotation. We wouldn't expect to see any of that in a children's story. But stiffening, getting awkward, yeah, that tells us something, and that fits really well into the idea of this story. And there's quite a few little bits in here that tell us something about the situation. It's not that badly written. Dinah, who's carrying a large bag. Now, the large bag implies that this is everything that she owns. It tells us that this girl is living door to door. And her actions here, she's obviously been around, she's been to many of these families before, it hasn't worked. Maybe Dinah is actually very difficult to get along with. Maybe she's aggressive to other children. Maybe people don't like her. We don't know. But there's some reason why she's been moved around from family to family. She's got this big bag, presumably only with everything she owns in it. The bit where he takes it away, Mr. Hunter, again, pretty well written. There's this nice irony which was mentioned in the quiz where he says, she knows her own mind, so she knows how she feels, and she says, I'm not going to feel shy, I'm not going to feel nervous, she's been through it all before. I almost get the impression from the writing that Dinah expects this to fail. It's going to happen again, I'm going to end up back in a home for children, nobody wants me, and that's the impression I get from the girl. If you want to take this further, as a writer making sense of the script, her interest in school and books is probably her escape from this situation. I feel like she's withdrawing into the books, reading these old books, because that's her reality. That's her escape from her real life, which actually sucks. So these books mean something more to her. Going to school is probably the only normality she's ever had. She's got this social life where she meets other students and feels normal. It's when she goes home, that's when she has a problem. For most of us, we feel okay at home. When we go to school, that's when we feel out of our depth, out of our comfort zone, and we don't like it. This girl feels the opposite. School is normality for her. Going home, that's where things are awkward. So maybe she likes school for that reason, and maybe that's why she's withdrawn into the books. I certainly get that impression. Then you've got the father say she knows her own mind, like it's a good thing. And then, what does a girl need with books? That's quite out-of-date writing. I mean, as if a girl wouldn't want to read. I mean, in my experience, girls read more than boys. And that's a fact, especially when they're younger. So I'm not really sure what they were trying to get at with this line. I'm sure he's written to be just friendly, but he's a little awkward and he's a little like misunderstanding here. He doesn't seem to get anybody. The awkwardness probably needed sort of ramping up a little bit. I like here, as though she said it many times before. Nobody in the class kind of got this the way I would have wanted to see it. If I was a director, I'd want Diana to huff, maybe roll her eyes. My name is Diana Glass. I'm 11. My parents died when I was 1. Since then, I've lived in a children's home. Like she's done it over and over again. That's the impression I get. And Lloyd backs it up, suffering crumpets. She is a robot. So she's saying it robotically without human emotion. She's done it over and over again until she's sick of saying it. So that's the impression I get. So the stage direction tells the actors what to do, and it goes further than just the words. We need these. Sometimes, I have read some scripts where there is a lot more information, where we get a lot more detail, a lot more clarity. And you're going to get that in a movie. You're going to get lots and lots of detail in a movie. You're going to get scenes, background, what things look like, what characters look like. You're going to get all sorts of notes. Then when we get to a children's TV show, not so much. We're also going to look at another one in here, which is from an Australian comedy series. It's not great. We did watch it in class once and no one liked it because it is really out of date and it's really boring. So we probably won't watch it. But it's not something where you get a lot of detail in the script because it's just a sitcom and the people writing the scripts are writing them very fast and everybody knows the characters because those sort of things, if the characters are well established, the laughs come from the stupid things the characters do. So we're not going to get so much detail in that because we don't need it. But in a movie you get much more detail because it would be the first time you've met these characters. Okay. So this is what they do. This is what stage directions do. They tell the actors and the director what the characters are doing, how they're doing it, and it gives us more of a background into why they're doing it. In other words, you've all seen the cliche, what's my motivation? An actor will always say to the director, what's my motivation? Why am I doing this? And the script, these stage directions, has those answers, and the director has to have read the script, understand the characters, understand the story, and then they will be able to explain to the actors, this is your motivation, this is how I want you to feel. So let's go back a page and let's have a look at 153, a quick review of sentence fragments. Now the reason we've done it backwards is because stage directions are one of the only places where you're allowed to use sentence fragments. Now a fragment is a piece, usually a broken piece. If I find a fragment, it's a small part of something else. Sentence fragments are an incomplete sentence. Now you all know that a sentence needs a few things to be a sentence. It needs a subject, it needs a verb, it needs a capital letter and a full stop. Mostly subjects and a verb. Now sentence fragments are groups of words without a finite verb. So it lacks the verb, therefore they are not a complete sentence. So in other words, what they are is nothing. They are not a sentence. I don't want to see them used in any of your writing, except under two possible circumstances. Number one, stage directions, because we don't write out full sentences because they are notes. They are notations from one person to another. They are not expected to be long. They're not expected to be detailed. They don't have to have full sentences. The only other exception to that is one that you can freely use, and that is that anything that goes inside your quotation marks, comes out of a character's mouth, can be sentence fragments, because that's how we speak. We don't always speak grammatically, we don't often even speak grammatically correctly. We often chew up our sentences and we use sentence fragments. And when you use that, in your writing of a story, your characters can speak whatever they want. Your characters can say anything, and it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. It has to be spelt properly because you're spelling it, you're interpreting it, but you can say anything coming out of their mouths. So it doesn't have to be a full sentence because it's not how people speak. So you can use sentence fragments coming out in quotes. So in the play scripts, sentence fragments can be used in stage directions, perfectly normal. Here we've got an example. Harvey, not listening, yes. Now, in this case, listening is a verb. What we don't have is a subject. Harvey is not listening, but we don't know that because in brackets, not listening. You'll also notice a lack of a capital letter and a lack of a full stop. These are just notes from the writer of the script to the director and the actors. It's not complex writing, it's not full writing, it's not formal writing, it's a notation, so it doesn't need all those extra details. Sentence fragments are used in play scripts to reflect how people speak in reality. For example, come on Lloyd, that's how people speak. Although I would argue that come on Lloyd is not a sentence fragment because it's got a verb and it's got a subject, come on Lloyd. Sentence fragments can be exclamations and expressions of emotions. For instance, Lloyd, some chance. Okay, there we go. That's a subject, a sentence fragment. Doesn't have a subject or a verb. Some chance. Mrs. Hunter, Lloyd. We have a subject. What we don't have is a verb. But I would also argue that it's got an inferred verb. Lloyd, come here is the driving force. But this is how people speak. Some chance. For sure, yeah, whatever. All of those things are sentence fragments, and that's how people speak all the time. The first sentence fragments above convey the character's skepticism about Dinah being a normal, some chance, while the second shows the character's annoyance or exasperation, Lloyd, in other words, when he's calling for them and they're not coming. Identify 10 other sentence fragments in the extract. What is the function of each sentence fragment? So you'll see a quiz on Google Class, but I also see a question. I want you to do this. Identify 10 other sentence fragments in the extract and give me the functions of each sentence fragment. So that's the question for you. There's also a short quiz to go through. Now I'm not there, but I will be checking this and you will be graded on it. Sorry for those of you that are in class and have made the effort to come in, appreciate that. But we're upstairs at the moment doing ILAC nonsense. So I can't be in two places at once, so, well I can, virtually, this way. So, sentence revision, quick revision. I'm not really sure why it's in the book. It doesn't really make sense to be there because basically we're saying this is how it works, don't do it. But it is worth it from that point of view that we're highlighting a major error. Those of you that have ever used Microsoft Word, if you type in a sentence fragment, it'll warn you. And it'll say sentence fragment because you haven't included a subject and a verb, and this sentence is therefore not a sentence, it's not complete, it's not grammatically correct. In normal writing, formal writing, in applications, in letters, you would never ever use a sentence fragment. But it's okay to use it inside quotation marks, and it's okay in stage directions. There's probably a few other places we can use it that I can't remember or not aware of, but don't use them. So go through them, identify the sentence fragments, and realize how they work, and then never ever use them again. All right, guys, make sure you hand those in by the end of lesson. Thank you.